Hello again, my name is Tyler Richard, and this is part two of my final project called Fitness Spotter. And in this video, I'll be explaining my code. So if you want to go and see what the website actually looks like and how it works, then go ahead and see part one. But anyways, I guess to start off, I'll tell you what languages I'm using, and I'm using the main stack, which uses MongoDB for my database, Angular for my front end framework, and then Node for my server side language. So basically, and then I'll explain my root or my file structure for this project. And in the root directory, we'll just have our server file, which is like what starts our server and then authenticates our users. Our package.json file, which is done or is created through Node when you first initialize the project. Our gulp file, which is our task manager, which I'll explain later on. And then Bower, which we'll just install all of our like libraries and frameworks that we're using. And then we'll have our public folder, which is what the browser uses. And then in there we'll have our index file, which is just a one-page view or one-page website. And then we'll have our views right here. So through Angular, we can just insert that into our index.html and then change it out whatever depending on whatever route is being used. And then we'll have our assets, which is just our CSS files, our images, and our JavaScript files. And then through gulp, whatever is done in our Angular folder, which is this ng folder, and then just has all our Angular files just to be better organized, I guess. And this file just specifically deals with the route, so depending on what route you're on, it'll give you that view, that HTML, and then use that Angular controller that you want to use along with it. And then and here's where we have all our controllers. And yeah, through gulp we can watch this ng folder, and whenever there's any file changes or anything like that inside this folder, it'll be updated in this main.js file. And then through here we can include that script tag for that file. And then through gulp we can also minify this main.js file. So I have word wrap taken off, so this is all just one line. It just speeds up the load process for the page. And then we'll have our config file for Cloudinary, and then we'll have our models for our database. So this is just our collection structure inside Mongo, and then we can export it and then use those collections inside our file right here. We can make our database calls and store information and read information and stuff like that. So yeah, basically in the server file we just require our packages and then our models that we're going to use for when we log in to see if the username and password is correct. And then this is I use Passport to authenticate and start sessions, which is just installed through npm, which is a part of Node. And then it'll do a database find or a MongoDB find to make sure that the email and password are correct. And then if not, nothing will happen. And then if everything is correct, it'll serialize the user. And then this function just makes sure that the user is logged in or not, pretty much if they're authenticated. And then this makes sure that they are, and if they aren't logged in, then they get redirected to the home page. And pretty much just runs that function. It instantiates it. And then this is part of the sessions. So right here I'm able to use the seeker and then set how long the cookie is, and then store their session data inside a new database. And then this is when they're actually initialized and the session is started. And then this is serving out anything inside this public folder. And then same thing with this API whenever this API route is being hit. And then this is when they log in, the post method, and then it actually authenticates them. And then when they log out, it'll redirect them to this route, which logs them out and destroys the session. And then on any route that this asterisk right here saying any route serve this index file, which is always going to have something here because of this ng view from Angular. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then right here is how we actually start our server, and then to tell it what port we're gonna want to run on. So when we run gulp, there we go, our server is not running, and that's done through this gulp file right here. This is the task that starts the server. This is the task that installs our libraries, and then this is the task that, like I was saying, builds the main.js file, and then this is the task that watches this, my Angular folder, and then the default task to run in terminal is gulp. So when you type just gulp, it'll run all three of those tasks, or all of your tasks that you describe in this array right here. So like, let's say we delete all of our libraries, and then now if we were to type, what was the name of that task? Bower. So gulp bower. In our index file, once we run that, it'll install those libraries again. But if we go ahead and delete it and run gulp, oh, I forgot to save. So we'll close our server and run gulp again, and then there it installs the libraries. So that's pretty much done through these gulp files. Explain the index file, and then these are just the views that are being loaded through Angular in this ng view. I explained this routes folder, so I guess we'll go ahead and explain some of my controllers. So my register controller, this is the controller when the users create their account, and then basically this whole function from here to here is what uploads the image through Cloudinary, and then I set a scope variable equal to that image URL where I can send it to my backend to store it in my database later on through this register function. And then this function is ran once the user submits that register form. And then these variables all right here just are set to the scope variables where from the form input. So basically just gets whatever the user inputs, and then this if else statement or else if statement is basically finding out whatever payment plan the user selected. And then once they register this, it'll make a post request where I can accept all this data right here in my backend and store it in my database. And then in this, in my HTML, in my views, this is the register. So my scope variables to get the input are all right here. Once this is the form when they are registering, and then once they submit it, it'll run that register function. So that's pretty much Angular, or creating that user. And then the client controller, that's like the same thing when the user adds their clients. So now the dashboard and profile controllers are pretty much the same as well. It's just reading information. So when we make this GET request to my backend, which I'll show in a minute, it'll find this data, and then we can pass it through Node and then accept it here in my front end through Angular. Then I can set scope variables equal to these things. Like right here, we're getting the current user that's logged in's gym name and their profile picture to display, and then we'll have an array of their clients to loop through to get each client and display that information. And then this is for dynamic routing right here. And that's pretty much it for the controllers that read information. And then we can also edit. So it's kind of like registering. It's kind of doing the same thing, but in our backend, we're doing an update statement in Mongo instead of a create statement. So that's pretty much it for my Angular controllers. I can go ahead and show you the dashboard where I'm looping through that array through ng repeat. So for each client inside that client's array, we can then use client dot like whatever information we want to get, like profile picture or their unique ID or anything like that. Basically just chaining, because this is just an object of JSON, so we can do dot profile picture or whatever we want. So now in my backend, these are where I'm accepting all these requests. So in this post request for register, in here we just have /register, but then in our register controller, we are making a post request of /API register. So when we go to this right here, we can create that user in Mongo. So we'll have email, and then this is the data that we sent through Angular. So now we're accepting it. So do request.body.email, because this is all just one object. So yeah, that's pretty much it for all the post requests. And then these are all just MongoDB calls. So find one and update, and this is just specifying like what user to do it to, and then what you're going to be updating the data with. So that's pretty much for the backend, and that's just a quick little walkthrough and explanation of my code.